Tell me it's alright, wake up, 'cause I just wanna hold you tight, wake up, and tell me it's alright.
So Wake Up has an interesting set of stories. I mean, every song has different things about it.
Yeah.
Wake Up we originally started writing it when we were touring on the second record this time around.
Yeah.
And I think we were staying at a hotel called Vernon Manor.
Yeah.
And
Somewhere in Ohio. I'm not sure if it was Columbus or Cincinnati.
And I started playing the guitar, singing this line, "At Vernon Manor, we've got all that you need." And you kind of had this little bounce to it. Vernon Manor, we've got all that you need. Sort of like a little bit of a joke, but it was just triggered by the phrase Vernon Manor. And then the song kind of developed into this love song. When you hear the song, obviously Vernon Manor is not the lyric anymore. It doesn't matter. He's got all that you need. But it started around this idea about staying at this hotel, like they've got all the amenities.
And I think sonically, though it sounded great, it also had a very different feel from the other songs on the record. I mean, the mandolin part that's on it just kind of, I think, it colored it in a certain way, and that's why it ended up in the end not being used on underneath.
It's also what has our Kansas moment in it.
Yes.
What you think of me?
You needed rototoms.
Yeah, I know. That would have been awesome.
That would have been really cool.
Dream Girl, we started writing. It's hard to determine because, when did you start writing it?
Years and years ago.
It was probably in '94 or '95.
And for those counting it, that's pre-Middle of Nowhere.
Yeah, that's like really old.
Before
that's
our
what
first
it
record.
is.
Yeah.
For a long time, I mean, I know I personally felt like this song maybe shouldn't even be recorded, or not that it should be recorded, but not from the point of view of
even us
let's
as
just
a band.
let's just try, not forcing it to be like a full band song, but feeling like there was a really special idea there. But remember when we went into work with Bob, we all said we need to find a way to bring this song to life. And find a way to reinterpret it.
I think it was a size thing. We went from this song that was traditionally going to be played in a really intimate way, really sweet love song, to being a song that was supposed to be big and powerful and big tom sounds and four on the floor.
More anthemic
kind of
and
more driving bass and
channeling the edge.
Yeah, you channeling the edge with ethereal guitars and not that it would lose the sweet nature of My Dream Girl, but that it would take that and just make it into more of an anthem type of feeling song.
With the song I Almost Care, it was the second collaboration that we had done with Matthew Sweet. I'd say, somewhere within a month or two after we had written Underneath. Had a really positive experience, obviously, writing with Matthew. It was exceptional.
It really sparked, hey, we should do another song together.
Well, and also it was really easy. I mean,
Underneath was 45 minutes or something?
Yeah,
like that?
sometimes
Crazy.
you write a song together and it can be really good, but it'll take you hours and you labor over lyrics for hours at a time, or maybe even several days. And that first collaboration was so easy and so quick, and we all felt really positive about it, that when we went to work on a second song, there was a real sense of motivation and just kind of this, hey, this is going to be really good.
Yeah, and so coming to I Almost Care, certainly the song has a hint of sarcasm in it.
The idea of the song being that you're singing this song, and when you hear it, you initially think this is a straight up love song but it comes down to the hook, and it says, if don't give up because we're so close, don't give up because we're almost there. Sort of like we're gonna make this work. It says I almost care.
I almost care.
Sort of like
wow, you're
I
a
have
giant ass.
like you've been great, and you've almost got me thinking about considering this as a reasonable option. Maybe.
It's like the guy who's constantly on the fence and can never commit.
Dancing in the Wind was one of the first songs that we recorded for the record, as far as the first demos. You know, we
There
submitted
were 3, or actually there were 4.
There were 4 original
Crazy
demos.
Beautiful, Get Up and Go, Dancing in the Wind was one of them.
And Underneath.
And Underneath. But it's also an interesting song, too, because I originally started playing it on guitar, which there's very few songs where a riff is actually based on not you playing guitar.
Yeah.
But definitely, as we started writing that song, I remember thinking, wow, there's several songs that have this more sort of straight ahead, not as soulful, more kind of rock.
Americana.
Yeah, more Americana sort of, hey, this is a straight ahead kind of rock song.
Because even songs like In the City, which were a more heavy type song
On the last
time around.
On this time around, yeah.
Or even Man from Milwaukee, although it was tongue in cheek, still had kind of the more kind of garagey type thing. This song, Dancing in the Wind, certainly was more just straight up rock influence. I wish I could claim responsibility for the guitar riff song, but that actually wasn't me going, hey guys, I got this riff.
There were actually times, I think, when we joked around with playing it on piano. You know?
Well, because I play piano, I would try and figure out how to play. Like, how would you play this piano? And then it sounded like a completely different song.
It sounded like a Burt Bacharach song.
Well, because it's kind of it's a suspended chord, and so when you play, if you move the bass note to the middle and you play the chord over it, it has this like. It really does sort of sound like this, like a show tune or something when you first hear it.
Exactly.
Like, oh, this is nice.
The only song that we've ever recorded literally in a closet was the original demo for Penny and Me, which
Of course, that was a very large closet.
it was a walk-in, big
It
enough
had
to put a
windows.
small drum set in.
Yeah.
But you know, the thing about that time period, while we're working on the record that eventually became Underneath, and once again, we just found ourselves frustrated and we're just
Stagnant.
waiting around, asking the label, will you fund us to record with this guy, or will you fund us to record with
Can
this
we
guy?
just
or
get this album done, for
when
God's sake?
when is the guy you want us to work with available? That we can start working with him.
Even more importantly, who is the guy you want us to work with?
But I mean, the core idea of the song was we had this basic, simple guitar riff and this basic feeling. And actually, when we were working with John Shanks before Glenn Ballard, which was what happened when we demoed the song.
Yeah.
I remember we had the song idea, and I remember going, I don't want to record this song right now because I want to wait until we're really in a place where we're going to record the song right, because
And you don't want to record it with John Shanks.
well, there was so much tension already going around, and I remember thinking, if we play this song, John's going to think he's going to like it and want to do it, but we don't want to do that, throw another song into the ring here when it's already tense. I also remember when we did that recording for one, we recorded on a cassette tape with a like $3,000 microphone.
More than
so
that.
Like that we have an
I'm actually going to
M149.
correct you on that one. That mic is somewhere around $8,000 microphone. It's an incredibly expensive, very old microphone.
Well,
very nice.
It's a mic that we had brought from Oklahoma, from the studio that we had built in Oklahoma. We brought it with us out to California where
But
we were
didn't have-
making the record, and so we had this little 4-track recorder that recorded onto a cassette tape. And
Yeah.
we had this $8,000 microphone, that was refurbished and this Telefunken awesome mic, and so it was just this ultimate irony of like probably one of the nicest mics you'll ever see in a studio being recorded in a closet on a cassette track 4-track recorder, and us being so excited about what we were doing. Like there was just this sense of like, yes, this is so awesome, it sounds so great.
Well, in contradiction to the tension that was happening with Glenn Ballard and working with these other people where the process was sort of stagnant, we had this recording that actually sounded, when you finished this little cassette recording, it actually sounded like a good record that had been squashed down and it had integrity to it. It had layers, and the song came through. I mean, when we finished that recording, we sat in my car, and I remember telling a couple different people, this is the first single for our next for this record.
Well, the song Hey has, I think, one of the more interesting backstories to it, in the sense that it's
just more complicated.
It's more
also.
complicated. It's more complicated. We met Greg while we were writing songs at the Castle
in France.
In France, we never actually wrote with Greg, but we had a real good vibe with him. Hung out with him. Very talented guy. Plays bass, drums, piano, guitar very, very well.
Virtuoso kind of player. And what ended up happening was we met Greg at the Castle in France, and we came back to California where we were working on the record, and we said, we need to write with Greg.
Yeah.
That would be a really cool production partnership.
We went there, we started off the day, and some songs are different. Sometimes they're inspired by music, but in this case, I started playing keys, Ike was on the rhythm guitar, and the song was built around this kind of like groovy, this simple melody. And within about an hour and a half, there was this really strong framework for this melody. And it was one of these things where it was like, everybody was in such a good vibe. We were like, great, you know what, I'm hungry, let's go get some food.
But we broke the cardinal rule, always record.
Yeah, exactly, we didn't record any of it. And we were in the studio, we went down to get coffee and food, and I remember the whole time it was like, that's what happens sometimes when you're in a good creative space is, obviously you're not thinking about the logistics. And so we went off and talked about, like,
all kinds
not
of
anything
stuff.
to do with the music, anything to do with the song, totally left that headspace. Came back, I remember we got coffee and put it down, and we sat down at the keyboard and everybody grabbed their instruments, and it was this like,
how does this song go?
What is this song? God, we forgot the melody. How did we forget the song that we were so into?
And also the lyrics weren't totally done.
Yeah.
And basically, we woke up the next morning and we walked in, and on the answering machine was a message from Greg, and he had obviously, it's probably 4 a.m. when
Been
he
losing
called,
sleep.
and you hear it, he's like, hey guys, he obviously had just woken up. He's like, I remembered it. It's like, anyway, goes like that, and it's awesome. I remembered it, and then he hangs up, and it was just such a funny thing to get this call in the morning, and we all were like, oh, that's the song, that's it, that's
exactly.
Hey, but it took that answering machine message at 4 a.m. for us to get it.
Waking up this morning thinking this can't be real, but they say there's nothing love can.
The song underneath is interesting for several different reasons. For one, it became the title track for the record, which is documented in Strong Enough to Break. But also the song, I think, represents sort of a process that we went through in making the record, which was that we actively started pursuing co-writes with other people after we first had the initial batch of songs that we'd written, because we knew, for one, that the label was going to sort of go, hey, you guys should write with people, because that was the MO.
Yeah, and also we had a feeling that they already were not fully on board with the creative process, that they didn't really know what they thought a Hanson record should be, and that they were going to kind of go down that classic, since we don't know, let's give them something to do, write some songs.
But also we wanted to write with different people we respected.
Absolutely.
There were certain people that we were interested in working with. So Matthew Sweet was a friend of a friend. We got together for dinner one night, and we basically said, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? And said,
and he said, well, I got 4 hours.
Yeah, exactly. He said we have 4 hours. That's right. And so we met over at a rehearsal space at SIR, and when we basically all sat down to respective instruments, and just within honestly minutes, the song just kind of started happening. The melody came in, and with Matthew, I think too, he had not had a lot of successful co-writing experiences, so I think he was a little bit kind of, I don't know how this is going to work.
I think that's also probably part of the reason why he said I got 4 hours.
Yeah, I don't really want to spend all day.
Well, the other thing, I think one of the jokes was Ashley, the director of Strong Enough to Break. He jokes that he, set the camera down to go to the bathroom, and when he got back, the song was already done. So it was a very liquid, very fast process that came together, and everybody was just super excited about it. And I don't know if we knew at the time, but it obviously sets a certain mood for, I think, the whole album and what the whole record is about.
It was the first co-write of the record. It was the first, concrete, we're getting together to write a fresh song for this record. And regardless of whether we knew it was going to be the title, we definitely knew that it had this sort of timeless quality to it as a song.
Lost Without Each Other was also really early on in the process of the record that eventually became Underneath. We had just worked with Matthew Sweet and written the song Underneath, and I think there was just a sense of feeling good about what was being written, feeling like we were starting to have a really solid record that was coming together, and the idea came across that we would work with Greg Alexander. When we went to work with Greg, it was funny because it was very much not the process of being easy like the song Underneath was. I mean, we spent 2 solid days of kind of grueling.
Which, in
over the
isolation,
song.
2 days doesn't sound like a long time, but when we had two other ideas. We had 2 other ideas that we started with, and we kind of we muddled through one, and we thought it was kind of a darker vibe, and then another one. It was based around 2 things. It was based around you started playing this drum beat, and then I was on the piano, which the whole time was kind of like a loud piano sound, and it was almost like, gosh, we've been playing these kind of slow songs and trying to get through this for a long time. It was like a release, and once we had, and the funny thing about it is, we spent probably a day and a half working on the lyrics, but the form and structure and how kind of
the song.
collection of the song, it came together within probably a couple hours. We've written a song, we like it. Label says, "Oh, I'm into it," but kind of question mark. We don't really have a direction. So we recorded the demo with one of our favorite engineers, Steve Churchard, brought him to our studio and said, we're going to basically record this like it's a record and make it sound great, because we don't want to record it twice or 3 times. We just want to make it happen. And
maybe if we do that, the label will hear it and
get it.
They'll get it, and that'll be their direction, which is the direction we would have given them.
The song Crazy Beautiful was one of the very first songs that was demoed for Underneath. And one of the things I think that makes Crazy Beautiful particularly unique is not only the 6/8 groove, which is that shuffled thing, but also it's very, very piano driven. A lot of songs over the course of our band have been very piano dominant. Songs like This Time Around and ballads like I Will Come to You and Weird and things like that. But the way that song is driven by the piano is a very, very
it's about the drum
particular,
part. It's about the piano playing together.
It's almost more like a Ben Folds type of quality to it, to where it's very much like the piano is playing the song.
Interestingly, in the mix, the piano didn't have it very loud.
Obviously, also, there's 2 drum sets on it. I don't know if most people hear that when you listen to the song, but there's actually 2 different drum takes playing at the same time, which adds just that extra
shuffle.
The polyrhythm, the shuffle, the train sound of just the drums.
One is accenting another rhythm, and these 2 guys are both playing drums.
Yeah, which is interesting.
One take was Taylor, one take was Zach.
When we did the original demo for it, there weren't the horns. There weren't the real brass, the arrangement that Jerry Hay did. And I think it wasn't until that moment when we actually heard them doing those parts that everybody was like, okay, we're done. We're done with this one. We can move on.
Yeah.
Strong Enough to Break clearly is a significant song for the album Underneath that was made, and for the film, thinking about the film. We began messing with some melodies after we'd, I think, finished recording, or were working on Hey,
I think,
and we were in the studio with Greg Wells, and the demos, or the rough mixes of some of the songs we had done, had just been sent to the label, and we were sort of in a positive mood and really just kind of
waiting for
around.
A response from the label, waiting for them to come back and say, this sounds great, go ahead, keep making the record, finish the whole thing out.
We started working on this melody, and then stopped to go pick up the phone and talk to Jeff Fenster and the label. We had just recorded Underneath, Dancing in the Wind, and Hey,
which all end up, those versions, on the record.
Our record. We felt like they really represented a quality and the sound and vision that could make a great record. And that phone call just completely turned all that stuff on its head. And we definitely had a kind of just about face, like where are we going from here? This is a really upsetting reality, and we came back in, and I know from me, and we all started talking to Greg about it. We just began sort of saying, well, screw it, like this is not what we expected, but we're gonna get it out sort of through the music. The lyrics became this parable to struggling with the machine, struggling with the label, struggling with kind of a power that you can't control, and having to say ultimately you have to be willing to break down, be willing to push through the things that are extraordinarily difficult, and what an irony to be strong enough to break.
Yeah. I will also make one other comment, which I don't know whether this is important, but I'll just say it, and then if it works in the edit, it works. I also do think that Strong Enough to Break fits into a lineage of several different songs, like, for example, Bop, which are these songs that have a kind of a parable-ish quality to them. I think Strong Enough to Break in particular is a little bit more metaphorical and a little bit more poetic in its description of the scenario. But nonetheless, it's this song that kind of sounds like this very pop upbeat song, but if you dive into the lyrics, there's this melancholy and this kind of slightly depressed type of angle lyrically that the song is talking about. And I think that's definitely something that we have continued to do over the years, is you kind of disguise this downtrodden emotion with a sense of optimism. And I think Strong Enough to Break walks that line very, very well.
There's only so many huge, how
many
big ballads can you have on a record? Because the record was slow in general. I mean, the collection of songs had a lot of
melancholy,
mellow songs. Breakdown. The initial idea of the song was called Breakdown.
Then it became Breakdown.
And then the story of All the Night became the story of going somewhere, crossing through somewhere where everybody's been, sort of the metaphor of welcome to a place that everybody's visited before. And
you'll be back again.
You'll be back again.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the recording that's on this package is the first recording that we did, and the recording that we did after, which was quote unquote the album recording. I think people have found this recording and have gotten a hold of it, but still no one's ever really been given the song. We've never put the song out.
In the process of the whole making of the Underneath album, this song continued to try and find a place for itself, and still to this day, I think we still are sitting here going, maybe this will be in the next record. Maybe this will be in the next record. It's kind of like Bop was a song like that lived and lived and lived, and then eventually found a spot on a record. There's a song called Can't Stop that was that way.
There's song Your Illusion, and also One More, which we're on.
There's lots of songs that have these multiple year lives of just trying to find a place on a record, because there's this kernel to the idea, or a song that just it needs to find a home, and it eventually will. It's just a matter of time. One interesting thing too is this was a song we planned on recording with Greg before the proverbial power cord got pulled. This was a song that we did record with John Shanks, and it just wasn't right.
I didn't feel like it was
and this was a song also that Glenn Ballard wanted to record. So it was a song that was very much intricately a part of Underneath, but not a part of Underneath.
Someone is one of the songs that was written while we were in France for that week at the Castle writing event. Also Breakdown and several other songs. But Someone is the only song that we've ever actually written in another language, which was an interesting and fun experience. I remember the first half of that day of writing this song was very, very unpleasant. Struggling to find a good idea, There was no good kernel. Everybody was like, golly, what is going on? We woke up at 7:30 or something like that, get going by 8:30 something, and then right around, I would say 11 o'clock, about a half hour before lunch, all of a sudden, after hours of laboring over ideas that did not have any real spark of anything, all of a sudden, boom, here's this groove and this rhythm, and we're like, oh wow, this feels good, this feels good. And so we came into lunchtime there at the castle feeling very, very buzzed about the experience. We're like, oh, we've got this good song, because it was just right there, it was fresh. Thank God we had recorded it. We didn't break the cardinal rule of not recording. And then finally kind of sat down afterwards and spent several hours and really with the template of trying to base it on the song Michelle, which was back and forth of French and English lyrics that basically said the same thing. We went and did that with the alternating lines of the song.
The nice thing about writing in a foreign language that you don't understand is
You
really
don't know.
can't second guess those lyrics, can
Exactly,
you? It's like,
exactly.
that sounds good, let's do it.
Let's do it.
The song "Let You Go," which was also written at the castle in France, was written with Carole King and another guy, but it was Carole King, right?
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Carole King, wrote,
Big deal.
You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman.
Need we say more?
Exactly.
So
Which I personally relate to really well.
I think that was just awkward. But writing that song was a really cool experience, if only for that relationship and being able to sit down with somebody who's written so many great songs, kind of understand their process for writing. It turned out to be a really solid song, but was never, I think, right for what we were doing
On our record.
with Underneath. It wasn't in the style and feel of the other songs, though it had something that was really good, and we all always gravitated to it, saying, where could this go? What could
I
this
think it was
live on?
mostly just that it didn't end up feeling as much like a full band song that we could interpret, that we're like, oh yeah, this totally makes sense when the three of us sit down and play it. But I actually still listen to this song recently. It's a really good song.
Yeah, I always thought it should be like on a TV soundtrack and be like,
Yeah.
ah.
But I think it's also, again, an example. You're listening through these songs, and as a band, we were trying to be proactive in reaching out to people,
Yeah.
as well as trying different things. And there's so many different songs, different types of things that were created, that we could have made 3 albums at least.
Yeah.
For 3 different bands.
For 3 different. The song Out of My Head, again, was a song that the kernel of it began, I think, at least 3 years before. The idea started when we were making This Time Around.
Yeah.
And it was based around this riff, this kind of walking melody, and at the point where it came back into the mix, we basically to try and pull the record together again and try one more thing to get the label excited and move things forward. We reunited with Stephen Laroni, who we'd made the first 2 records with.
At that point in the process,
We were losing our minds.
we were kind of losing our minds trying to just find something that would have the label say, yes, we're ready, let's finish a record.
I think it's also worth noting that part of the reason why we were going out of our minds at that particular point was we had been writing songs and submitting songs for, at that point, over a year. That was like the year plus mark. In January
Just
of
sending in songs, sending
2000,
in songs.
January 2001 was when we first sent that first batch of songs.
Yeah, we were probably in the 70s at that point as far as how many songs we had sent them and written for them. And
Played for
for
them in
anyone
some
who's
form
not
or
a
another.
musician, that's a lot of songs to write for one record. I mean, it's hard to write and finish 70
That-
songs,
Period.
especially when you're not in a space where you're feeling really motivated by the process, where you're not,
Yeah.
we weren't feeling like, yes, it's going great, we're gonna we're going to keep writing because we feel so high. It was this struggle of like, okay, we've just got to write another song. We've just got to write one more, and then we'll get to that good place.
But interestingly, though, that song was, I think, it did have like a buoyancy to it. I mean, it had a good energy to it, and I think you hear in that song, you hear sort of similar qualities of the songs that actually made the record ultimately, like Get Up and Go, and like Lost Without Each Other, and Hey, and it was kind of amazing that that far in, stuff was still coming out that we were feeling like, hey, this has got to get energy to it, but interestingly, it wasn't ultimately picked for the record. Too many songs.
We've been writing songs for now over a year. We get together with Stephen Laroni, who we collaborated with on the first 2 records, Middle of Nowhere this time around, and then we're writing songs. And 2 of the songs that were written were Love Somebody to Know and the song Out of My Head.
I think Love Somebody to Know was just a song that it was once again about this feeling, this energy, that it had.
The recording is, to me, has this really, really unique quality to it. And I always felt like something about the demo didn't get fully translated to the recording that we ended up releasing on iTunes as like a special, limited edition single type thing. But I remember listening to that recording going, wow, what is it about this thing? And I think part of it is it's got this like Mick Jagger, Rolling Stones, like shaker that's really, really loud. I think it's because you were singing
and a
the
little bit
vocal
out of time.
And a little bit out of time.
Hey, watch it.
and I think you were singing the lead vocal and playing the shaker at the I don't remember.
Probably, yeah. Actually, we probably were.
And so it just has this swagger about it. It's a little bit slower than the final recording that we released before.
Which ended up being basically ended up being a B-side.
Yeah, B-side,
song.
exactly.
But this song, You've Gotta Love Somebody to Know, it talks about just simple things, little things that you wouldn't typically care about. But when you love somebody, or the other way to talk about the hook is, you don't understand what it's like to feel this way unless you love somebody.
Exactly.
That's kind of the hook.
Taking me down, my friend, feeling you round all again. Hey, I'm taking me down.
My Own Sweet Time was the only song that we wrote with Glenn Ballard. When we went to work with him, we presented a couple ideas that we were working on, and he wanted to do Believe and some other songs. But we did end up writing one song called My Own Sweet Time. And I think it was a really good song. It had a different kind of feel with the way we did the drums, and there was kind of a skip to it that was different.
There was definitely a darkness to it. I mean, the minor verses, and
and still the lyrics are unfinished. I mean, this recording is one of a few that to this day is not completely done. I mean, the lyrics are. There's some that are finished, but it's there's definitely some mumble in there because this recording didn't. I mean, the song, the session ended with Glenn before we said, "Oh, the song's finished."
There's this irony, I think, to the song, which is one, it's called My Own Sweet Time.
And the album was taking its own sweet time.
The album was taking its own sweet time getting finished. Glenn was doing, I think, 4 records at the same time he was working with us. So we were really having trouble getting enough time with Glenn to finish anything.
Which is why, in part, the lyrics are not totally done.
There was this this kernel of a really solid idea that just is, I guess, still taking its own sweet time and being finished. Because even the version that's on the disc doesn't have finished lyrics.